In the humid quiet of an Orlando morning in January 2006, a young woman vanished without a trace, a woman whose life was steady, promising, full of plans she'd carefully laid out for the future. Her name was Jennifer Kesse, 24 years old, ambitious, warm-spirited, loved by many, and just on the edge of adulthood's full stride. One moment, Jennifer was texting her boyfriend goodnight, preparing for a new workday. The next, she was gone. And in the nearly 2 decades that have passed, no one, not the police, not private investigators, not the thousands of people who've pored over every detail, has been able to answer the one question that matters most. What happened to Jennifer Kesse? This case isn't simply about a missing person. It's about silence. A silence so complete, so unnerving, that it still reverberates through every hour of that January week. There were no cries for help reported, no signs of forced entry, no noise overheard by neighbors, just a void. And that void grew larger when Jennifer didn't show up for work the next morning. She was responsible, punctual, predictable in the best possible way. So when she didn't walk through the office doors on schedule, people noticed. They called her. They waited. They wondered. And by the time the alarm truly set in, Jennifer's car had already been moved, her phone silenced, and a figure, still unknown, had been captured by a security camera, shielded from identification by a simple fence post. A few inches of metal, a sliver of misfortune, a moment of irreversible shadow. This is the story of a disappearance that feels like a magic trick performed in broad daylight. Jennifer wasn't partying on vacation. She wasn't lost on a hike. She wasn't living a secret double life. She was at home, her own home, returning from a work trip, preparing for another day in her routine. The place she lived should have been safe, but the truth was more complicated. The condo complex was under heavy renovation. Workers were constantly moving through the hallways, entering units, resurfacing floors, plastering walls. Strangers everywhere. Strangers inside and around the property at all hours. Jennifer had told her loved ones she felt uneasy about it, that the workers leered at her, watched her in ways that made her uncomfortable. And yet, like so many people in their early 20s, she adapted. She brushed it off. Because how often do our instincts whisper warnings we don't quite know how to interpret? How often do we say, it's probably nothing? How often does fear get softened by optimism? When Jennifer disappeared, it was as if the world had been holding its breath, waiting for the moment something would finally break the case wide open. But that moment never came. Phone records? Quiet. Bank accounts? Quiet. Digital footprint? Silent. And the only real clue, the only physical image of a potential suspect, was obscured so perfectly it might as well have been intentional. The unknown figure walked with casual steps, not hurried, not panicked, just normal. Normal enough to make your skin crawl. Jennifer's family refused to let her become another statistic, another unsolved name in a database. They mobilized instantly, driven by a mixture of terror and determination. They handed out flyers, they spoke to the press, they pushed the police, and they never stopped, not even when leads dried up, not even when tips turned into smoke and dust. They kept her story alive. And that's why you're hearing it today. Because someone loved her enough to keep her present, even in her absence. But the mystery only deepens with time. Further questions rise to the surface, each one unraveling new layers of uncertainty. Was Jennifer taken by someone she knew? Was she followed? Was she targeted? Or was this a crime of opportunity in a place filled with people passing through? To understand what happened, we must step back into Jennifer's life, not just the surface details, but the emotional landscape of who she was. A young professional thriving in her career, a boyfriend she was committed to, even though they lived in different cities. A family deeply woven into her decisions and daily interactions. Jennifer was grounded, responsible, rational, the kind of person who returned calls, kept her commitments, and stayed connected to the people she loved. And that's what makes her disappearance feel so abrupt, so wrong. No build-up, no warning signs, no trail of conflict or danger. Her life was stable, predictable, safe, until it wasn't. In the hours leading up to her disappearance, everything seemed normal. She spoke to her family. She spoke to her boyfriend. She went home. She slept. She prepared for the next day. And then the silence began. By the time her car was found, parked at a completely different complex, its interior wiped down, the case already had the chilling feeling of something meticulously planned or perhaps shockingly random. To this day, Jennifer's disappearance remains one of the most haunting unsolved cases in Florida's history. It's a puzzle with missing pieces, a narrative with its center torn out. And now, as we begin the journey through her life, the days leading up to her disappearance, the mystery of the scene itself, and the theories that still ignite debate, one truth remains constant. Someone out there knows what happened to Jennifer Kesse. And between the shadows of uncertainty and the light of hope, her story still begs to be told.
Before we examine the days before Jennifer Kesse vanished, before we break down the minute-by-minute pieces of her timeline, we need to understand who she was, beyond the headlines, beyond the posters, beyond the mystery. Because Jennifer's story doesn't begin with her disappearance, it begins with a life fully lived, a life that mattered, a life shaped by ambition, warmth, intelligence, and the steady confidence of someone who knew exactly where she was headed. To understand Jennifer's disappearance, we must understand Jennifer herself. She grew up in Orlando, Florida, part of a close-knit, protective family. Parents Drew and Joyce, and her younger brother Logan. Family was everything to her. They weren't simply related, they were connected, communicating daily, sharing meals, checking in, texting, calling, laughing. Jennifer didn't drift. She built relationships. She maintained them. She prioritized them. And she wasn't dramatic or impulsive. She didn't disappear to make a statement or seek attention. Her personality stood in complete opposition to that. She was steady. She was dependable. She was the anchor, not the storm. From a young age, Jennifer stood out, not because she was loud, but because she was focused. She knew what she wanted and wasn't afraid to work for it. She took school seriously, earned excellent grades, and had a natural ability to balance academics, friendships, and extracurriculars. She was a planner, someone who thought ahead, someone who believed in structure. Even in childhood photos, you see the poise, the kindness in her eyes, the confidence of someone who carried both compassion and determination. People gravitated toward her not because she demanded attention, but because she radiated calmness and sincerity. College brought a new world for Jennifer. She attended the University of Central Florida, a place where she flourished socially and academically. UCF was massive, bustling, alive, and Jennifer emerged as a leader among her peers. She lived off campus with friends, formed lasting friendships, and navigated the complexities of young adulthood with maturity beyond her years. She wasn't reckless, she wasn't careless, she was responsible, thoughtful, present. Jennifer finished college with a degree already pointed toward her future. She wasn't wandering. She already knew her path: finance and property management, numbers, real estate, long-term planning. She thrived there. She understood the world in practical terms and moved through it with intention. After graduating, Jennifer quickly landed a job at Central Florida Investments, where she excelled. She became known as a diligent employee with a sharp eye and a strong work ethic. Her bosses respected her. Her coworkers trusted her. She was only 24, but you could already see the trajectory of someone headed toward career success, someone building the foundation for the life she envisioned: stability, growth, independence. That independence meant something to her. She saved carefully, she budgeted wisely, and by her mid-20s she achieved a major milestone. She bought her first condo. For many young professionals, that kind of accomplishment is a distant goal. For Jennifer, it was the next logical step. She was becoming the woman she had always planned to be. Her condo, located at the Mosaic at Millenia, wasn't perfect, not by a long stretch, but it was hers. A symbol of her hard work, a place where she could relax after long days, decorate, make cozy, and build a home. The complex itself was still under heavy renovation. Many units were unfinished, being remodeled. Workers, contractors, painters, and installers were constantly circulating in the hallways. And while this created a sometimes chaotic and disruptive environment, Jennifer loved the idea of ownership. She was proud of her space, proud of her accomplishment. It was a sign she was moving forward, checking off milestones, leveling up her life one choice at a time. And then there was her love life, stable, committed, grown up. She had been dating her boyfriend Rob for a little over a year. They didn't live in the same city. He lived in Fort Lauderdale, but the distance wasn't a barrier. They communicated constantly, daily calls, texts, weekend trips back and forth. Their relationship had depth, two people building something real, something mature. They argued like any couple, felt the strains of distance, but they were committed. They shared dreams, shared plans, spoke of futures aligned rather than drifting. Jennifer was not the type to disappear into chaos or conflict. She was grounded. She was loved. She was seen. To her friends, Jennifer was the type of person you could count on completely. Someone who remembered birthdays, someone who listened without judgment, someone who offered advice with sincerity. She was bright, not just intellectually, but emotionally. She noticed small details. She anticipated needs. She paid attention. She wasn't a partier. She wasn't restless. Her life wasn't turbulent. Jennifer Kesse was the kind of person whose disappearance feels most shocking precisely because she wasn't lost in her own life. She wasn't spiraling. She wasn't struggling. Everything in her world was aligned. Her routine reflected that. Each morning, wake, dress, drive to work, connect with coworkers, complete her projects. Evenings, calls with Rob, dinner, relaxation, maybe a show or time with family, and then sleep. Simple, familiar, comfortable. So, when Jennifer Kesse vanished, the first thing her loved ones understood was this. Something had interrupted a life defined by consistency. Jennifer was not the person who failed to show up, not the person who ignored calls, not the person who went off grid, not the person whose phone went dark without reason. Her disappearance wasn't just unexpected. It was completely out of character. But to fully grasp how wrong everything felt, we need to look even closer at Jennifer's emotional landscape. She was confident, yes, but she also carried an intuitive sensitivity, an awareness of her surroundings. She told people when something made her uneasy. And lately, she had been uneasy. The condo complex had become a place of discomfort. Not danger, not fear, just discomfort. The workers, many who didn't speak English, were unfamiliar faces she passed daily. She told her family that some of them stared at her, watched her, made comments she couldn't fully understand, remarks that felt off. And though she never dramatized it, the feeling lodged itself in her mind. She didn't like walking through the complex alone. She didn't like being watched. She didn't like being a single woman living among so many strangers. But she dismissed it as a temporary feeling. Construction would end. The workers would move on. It would all settle eventually. Until then, she would adapt. That was Jennifer's nature. She didn't jump to conclusions. She didn't assume the worst. She trusted life to keep its balance. Her relationship with her family remained the emotional center of her life. They shared their days with her, their worries, their excitement, their plans. Jennifer wasn't just a daughter. They considered her a friend, a confidant. Her parents respected her independence but remained deeply connected. She visited them regularly. She spoke to them daily. She trusted them, and they trusted her intuition. So when, days before her disappearance, Jennifer mentioned the strange feeling around the construction workers, it lingered in their minds. Not as a red flag, just as an uneasy footnote. One of those details that doesn't mean much until, suddenly, it means everything. Everything in Jennifer's world pointed toward growth and promise. In the months before she vanished, she received a promotion at work, a sign that her dedication wasn't going unnoticed. Her efforts were rewarded, her skill acknowledged. She was moving up. Her career was expanding. Her life was becoming fuller, richer, more secure. She began talking about travel plans, holidays, future goals. Nothing suggested turmoil. Nothing hinted at danger. Nothing foreshadowed disappearance. Jennifer Kesse was a young woman mid-stride through a life well-built, a life carefully and thoughtfully constructed, and that is why her absence carved such a deep wound, not just because she mattered to the people who loved her, but because she was someone the world expected to see tomorrow, and the next day, and the next.
Understanding her background highlights the magnitude of the mystery ahead. This wasn't a story shaped by chaos or conflict. This was a life built on stability and hope. And that is what makes her disappearance feel so suddenly and brutally out of place. To understand what happened next, we must walk with her into the final days before she went missing. The choices she made, the conversations she had, the moments that now feel magnified in hindsight. The timeline before the disappearance begins to sharpen, and soon, the last normal hours of Jennifer Kesse's life come into focus. To understand the final hours before Jennifer Kesse vanished, we have to step into the quiet rhythms of her life in late January 2006, a week that began like any other, a week that held no warning signs, no cracks in routine, no tremors beneath the surface. All we have are pieces, fragments of conversations, timestamps, phone calls, text messages, moments that, in hindsight, now feel impossibly heavy. This wasn't a disappearance that unfolded gradually. It happened suddenly, within a narrow window, a window so tight, so exact, that investigators have lived inside it for nearly 2 decades, searching for the missing link. 3 days before Jennifer vanished, she was on a weekend trip with her boyfriend, Rob. They'd spent time together in St. Croix. Sun, ocean, relaxation. The kind of peaceful escape that balances out the stress of daily life. They returned feeling refreshed, connected, grounded. Their relationship had its complexities, like all relationships do. Distance, busy schedules, differing routines. But they were committed to each other and planning ahead. That weekend trip wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A reset that left Jennifer feeling centered and content. Jennifer returned home to Orlando on Sunday evening, January 22nd. She stopped by her parents' house, as she often did after traveling. Dropped off her rental car, picked up her own, shared stories from the trip, chatted, laughed, exhaled after the flight. Everything was normal. Her parents noticed nothing unusual. No anxiety, no tension, no sense of threat lingering around her. If anything, she seemed peaceful. The trip had gone well. She was rested and ready for the week ahead. From her parents' home, she drove back to her condo. It was already dark by the time she arrived.
The construction workers would have gone home for the day. The complex would have been quiet, just Jennifer returning to her space. On Monday morning, the 23rd, Jennifer woke up, dressed, and headed to work. A normal start, a predictable routine. There was no deviation from her schedule. She drove her black Chevy Malibu to her office at Central Florida Investments. Coworkers recalled her being in good spirits, productive, engaged. She attended meetings, responded to emails, navigated the day with her usual focus. Nothing stood out. Nothing struck anyone as unusual. It was simply Monday. But tucked into the fabric of that day were tiny threads, subtle moments that would later take on a haunting clarity. During work hours, Jennifer spoke to family and friends. She talked to her mother at one point. She exchanged messages with coworkers. She kept in touch with Rob. Her conversations were stable, ordinary, unremarkable, until one detail surfaced. She told someone she felt exhausted. Travel fatigue, she said. Nothing alarming, just tired. A common, relatable exhaustion. After work, she drove to Rob's home in Fort Lauderdale for a night. Or rather, she planned to, but changed her mind. The trip felt too long, too draining. She decided to drive straight home to her condo instead. A rational, thoughtful decision. A decision that presented no red flags. But that choice, her return home, placed her in the exact environment she'd recently described as uncomfortable. That Monday evening, Jennifer's last known evening, unfolded quietly. She called Rob. They talked for a while. The tone of the conversation later became a point of interpretive speculation. Some said they sounded tense. Others said it was normal. Two people, tired after a long day. But what matters is this. Nothing in that call suggested danger. Nothing implied fear. Nothing indicated Jennifer expected anything other than waking up the next morning, getting ready, and going to work. When they hung up, it was close to 10 p.m. Her phone records confirmed she received no further calls afterward. Her world became silent, peaceful, unaware of what the night would bring. Tuesday morning, January 24th, the day Jennifer disappeared. Here is the timeline investigators reconstructed, a timeline sharpened by the absence of answers. Between 7:30 and 8 a.m., Jennifer should have been getting ready for work. She usually left home around 7:30, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later. Her routine was precise, but not rigid. She showered, dressed professionally, prepared for the day. She kept her space neat and tidy. Nothing in her condo suggested a struggle. Nothing broken. Nothing displaced. Her towel was damp. Makeup and toiletries laid out as if mid-use. Everything pointed to a normal morning unfolding, right until it wasn't. Jennifer didn't show up for work, and that was strange, very strange. Her coworkers noticed almost immediately. Text messages bounced. Calls rang without answer. They knew Jennifer. She wasn't late. She wasn't absent. For her to miss work without explanation wasn't just inconsistent. It was alarming. Still, people initially assumed something minor had happened. Car trouble, overslept, a morning delay. But the hours passed, and the silence became heavier. Her phone remained off or unreachable. Her voicemail unplayed. By midday, concern had shifted into fear. Her family's timeline followed a similar trajectory. They expected a message, a check-in, a quick update. Jennifer never failed to communicate. She never vanished into radio silence. When they couldn't reach her, they felt it immediately, deep in their stomachs, that something was wrong. Not a misunderstanding, not an oversight. Something deeper. Something unnatural. By early afternoon, Jennifer's boss contacted her family. A detail that seems small, but carries weight. Her boss was worried, and bosses don't usually worry about punctual employees unless the absence is glaring, out of character, and unnervingly silent. At this point, two parallel realizations were forming, in her workplace and in her family's hearts. Jennifer was missing. Not late, not busy, missing. Her parents began calling her repeatedly. No answer. Her brother did the same. Nothing. Joyce and Drew felt a growing dread, a dread that overshadowed logic. They called hospitals. They called friends. They called her boyfriend. They called anyone who might offer the smallest clue. But the result was always the same. No one had heard from her. No one had seen her. No one knew where she was. While her family scrambled to understand why Jennifer would suddenly be unreachable, a crucial detail had already occurred earlier that morning, though no one knew it yet. Her car, her black Chevy Malibu, had been driven away from her condo. At some point between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m., someone moved it, parked it, left it at another apartment complex about a mile away. This detail would become the anchor of the entire timeline, because Jennifer didn't move it. Someone else did. And by the time the world realized she was missing, her car was already sitting abandoned, its doors locked, its interior wiped, waiting to be discovered. Every moment of that morning is now magnified in retrospect. The shower, the damp towel, the items laid out for work, the unmade bed, the lack of struggle. Jennifer had begun her day. She was preparing to leave. She was following her normal routine. And in that narrow window, between her last known communication Monday night and the time she failed to arrive at work Tuesday morning, something happened. Something swift. Something silent. Something that left no trace inside her home, but reshaped every second of the hours that followed. This window, the final moments of normalcy, marks the end of the known timeline. What comes next is the darkness in between. The gap. The unanswered question pressed against the heart of this case. What happened to Jennifer Kesse between 10 p.m. Monday night and 8 a.m. Tuesday morning? To answer that, we must step into the scene of her disappearance, the physical space where Jennifer lived, the surroundings she navigated daily, and the unsettling environment in which everything changed.
To understand the moment Jennifer stepped out of her life and into the unknown, we must step inside the place she called home, the Mosaic at Millenia. It wasn't a typical condo complex, not in 2006, not during heavy renovation, not in the unpredictable swirl of noise, dust, and constant movement that shaped its days. There were finished units and unfinished units, residents and contractors, security features that existed in theory more than in practice. The kind of place where the boundaries between public and private space blurred. And Jennifer, living alone, walked through that environment every day. Her third-floor condo was neat, organized, curated with intention, a space that reflected her personality, simple, clean lines, calming colors, everything in its place. When investigators entered the apartment, nothing seemed out of order. No sign of violence, no forced entry, no overturned furniture, no missing items. It looked like a normal morning interrupted mid-routine. The TV remote sat where she left it. Her luggage from the St. Croix trip was unpacked. A damp towel hung from the bathroom. Her outfit for the day, likely chosen, was missing from her closet. Her presence was everywhere, and yet she was gone. The front door wasn't broken. There were no signs of a struggle in the hallway. Nothing spilled, nothing shattered. Everything suggested one chilling possibility. Jennifer walked out of her condo willingly, or someone compelled her to, quietly, quickly, without noticeable resistance. That possibility sits like a stone in the chest of anyone who studies this case, because it suggests familiarity, or stealth, or calculation. Jennifer was aware of her surroundings. She wasn't the type to open the door to a stranger. She wasn't the type to let someone inside without reason. She wasn't reckless with safety. So how did someone reach her, intercept her, or overpower her with no trace?
Outside Jennifer's unit, the hallways were narrow. Dim lighting, fresh drywall, dust, drop cloths waiting for workers' return, ladders tucked against walls, tools left behind overnight. The environment wasn't polished. It was transitional, in between, a place in flux. Strangers were everywhere. Workers moved freely across floors. Some units were empty shells. Others housed residents. And Jennifer had already told people she didn't like walking through the complex alone because she felt watched. It wasn't a fear born of imagination. It was the result of eyes that lingered too long, a discomfort that stuck with her. And that discomfort now echoes like a warning.
The parking lot outside held another clue. Jennifer's designated spot sat empty on Tuesday morning. Her car was gone. Which meant this: whoever took Jennifer, or whoever encountered her, likely left with her car. The question is why? Was she inside it? Was she forced to drive? Was she incapacitated? Or was someone moving her car to stage the scene, erase evidence, confuse the timeline? The car is central to everything. It is not merely a vehicle. It is a timeline anchor, a silent witness that was moved, parked, abandoned. A witness that held fingerprints wiped away, leaving its story untold. The security gates of the complex were another ambiguous detail. Yes, Mosaic at Millenia had gates, but they weren't consistently monitored. They weren't consistently secure. Workers, residents, deliveries, people were constantly entering and exiting. A gate does not guarantee safety when it stands half open. A lock does not protect when dozens of people hold temporary keys. Jennifer's home was modern on paper, but porous in practice. Anyone could access the building. Anyone could observe residents. Anyone could learn patterns. And if someone wanted to find Jennifer at a predictable time, they could. Her routine was dependable. Her departure times consistent. Predictability can be comforting until it becomes dangerous. Inside her condo, the last clue about her morning was the bathroom. The damp towel, the hair straightener unplugged, the shower slightly steamed, her toiletries arranged with intention. Jennifer had gotten ready. She was preparing for the day. She was interrupted only after she had started her morning routine. This suggests a narrow window, a small sliver of time in which someone could approach her. Had she locked the door behind her? Did someone intercept her on her way out? Did someone wait for her? Or did something happen as she stepped into the hallway, unaware of eyes watching from just beyond her door? The hallway outside her unit becomes more haunting the longer you imagine it. Silent, still, dimly lit by overhead fixtures that buzzed with an industrial hum. At that hour, around the time Jennifer would leave for work, it wasn't crowded. It wasn't noisy. Most residents were inside. Most workers hadn't yet arrived. This was a window when Jennifer was alone. If someone wanted privacy, if someone wanted to avoid witnesses, this was the moment. Then, the front steps, the parking lot, the path she took every day. Investigators believe she likely reached the parking area. Her condo was not far from her vehicle. A short walk, seconds of exposure. And yet those seconds were enough. What could have happened? Did someone approach her? Did someone wait near her car? Was she taken by surprise? Or was this something more premeditated? Someone familiar with her building layout? Someone who understood blind spots? Someone who timed their approach perfectly? The most disturbing clue emerged 24 hours later.
when security footage from another apartment complex captured a figure parking Jennifer's car and walking away. The footage was grainy, the camera placement unforgiving. A fence post blocked the face in every frame, not once, not twice, but consecutively. A cruel alignment of angles that erased identity. The figure walked with calmness, confidence, a measured pace that suggested no urgency, no panic. Whoever this person was, they were comfortable. Comfortable enough to walk casually. Comfortable enough to leave the car without wiping away their steps. The car itself had been wiped. Completely. Intentionally. But the act of parking? It was done without anxiety, without haste, as if the person felt invisible. Inside the car, investigators found only a clue of absence. Nothing. No prints, no usable DNA, no sign of struggle. The only meaningful trace was the car's placement. It wasn't hidden. It wasn't abandoned in a forest or down a remote road. It was left in a place where it would eventually be found, but not immediately connected, which raises a chilling possibility. This wasn't panic. This wasn't sloppy. This wasn't impulsive. This was composed, calculated, deliberate. The person who moved Jennifer's car knew what they were doing. The disappearance scene, once fully unpacked, reveals a story without words. A silent narrative, a sequence executed with precision. Jennifer wakes, she showers, she gets ready. She leaves the condo. She heads to her car. And then, a break. A severing. A moment where her timeline collapses into question marks. What happened on that walk? Was she approached, dragged, forced, lured, confronted by someone she knew or trusted? The evidence doesn't speak. The walls don't tell stories. The ground doesn't confess. All we have are shadows. The disappearance scene is not chaotic. It is terrifyingly orderly. Jennifer left no trace because the person responsible left no trace. No noise, no chaos, no visible struggle, no desperate object. It is the absence of evidence that echoes the loudest. A quiet so complete, it becomes its own kind of violence. To go forward, we must follow the search, the investigation, the frantic hours that followed, where every minute felt like a door closing, every hour a step deeper into mystery. The moment Jennifer's family realized something was wrong, everything shifted. The day transformed from routine to crisis in a matter of minutes. Her parents, Joyce and Drew, didn't hesitate. They got in the car, drove straight to Jennifer's condo, hoping, praying she'd simply overslept, or her phone had died, or that the worry was all a misunderstanding. But deep down, they felt the truth rising in their chests. Something wasn't right. When they arrived, the eerie calm inside Jennifer's home confirmed everything they feared. The coffee mug on the counter, the damp towel, the neat bed, the normalcy. A normalcy that didn't match the heavy silence. Her parents walked through each room, calling out her name with growing urgency. No answer. No sign of her presence. The condo didn't offer comfort. It offered questions. Endless questions that pressed into their throats like static. Had Jennifer left willingly? Had she been interrupted? Had someone already taken her far beyond reach? Her father checked her phone charger. Her mother looked at her shoes and purse. Everything appeared untouched. Jennifer hadn't planned to go anywhere except work. And not showing up for work wasn't just unusual. It was impossible. By the time police were called, the urgency was clear. This was not a standard missing person case. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't someone skipping obligations. This was a responsible adult who vanished without explanation.
But the first hours of an investigation are critical, and in Jennifer's case, time slipped away too quickly. Miscommunication, assumptions, the belief that adults sometimes choose to be out of contact. Those early hours, when evidence could still be fresh, when sightings could still matter, were spent waiting. Her parents waited. Co-workers waited. Police waited. And while everyone waited, whoever took Jennifer continued to move unseen. When law enforcement finally stepped into the condo, they examined every detail. They looked for fingerprints. They searched for signs of forced entry. They studied the timeline her family provided. And yet, the condo offered little. It was too clean, too orderly, almost frustratingly normal. No overturned furniture, no marks, no scratches, no blood, no scent of a struggle. Jennifer's home didn't whisper the violence of an attack. It whispered silence. Investigators faced a chilling truth. Whatever happened to her happened outside those walls and had been executed with disturbing efficiency. Jennifer's family began their own search immediately. They spread the word. They contacted news stations. They printed hundreds of flyers. Their urgency was visceral. Every second felt heavy with possibility. Every minute felt like it could be the difference between finding Jennifer alive or losing her forever. The community responded quickly. Friends, neighbors, co-workers, they showed up. They walked streets. They combed through fields. They checked dumpsters. They searched wooded areas nearby. The city itself became a grid. Blocks, buildings, intersections, all measured against the question, where is Jennifer? Then came a turning point, a discovery that shifted the investigation's direction. Jennifer's Chevy Malibu was found abandoned at another apartment complex called Huntington on the Green, just a mile from her home. The car had been towed after sitting ignored for hours. At first glance, it looked out of place, unfamiliar, out of context in that environment. But once police confirmed it was Jennifer's car, the urgency escalated from concern to crisis. The car was not found by accident. It was found because it was placed, intentionally, and someone had walked away from it with calm steps. Investigators examined the car in detail. They opened every door, lifted every floor mat, checked the trunk, looked for fingerprints. And the most unsettling discovery wasn't something present, it was something missing. No usable fingerprints, no DNA, no signs of struggle. The surfaces were wiped, thoughtfully, professionally. Someone went through the effort to remove their presence from the car. Someone who understood that fingerprints tell stories. There was one partial print on the exterior door handle, but it didn't match anyone. Not Jennifer, not a known associate, not a registered offender. A partial clue, a whisper of a presence, a ghostly signature without a name. Security footage from the complex where the car was abandoned led to the most iconic and frustrating piece of evidence in the entire case, the unidentified figure, captured walking near Jennifer's car, head and face blocked perfectly by a gatepost in each frame. 3 seconds of footage, 3 shots, 3 near misses at identifying the person who parked the car. It was as if the camera was teasing the truth, giving just enough to confirm someone was there, but not enough to reveal who. The way the person walked, not hurried, not nervous, only deepened the mystery. Some argued the person walked like a man. Others believed it could be a woman. The body shape ambiguous, the clothing generic, all details swallowed by poor resolution and cruel angles. Investigators canvassed the area around both complexes. They spoke to residents, workers, anyone who might have seen something. No one witnessed Jennifer leaving her home. No one heard a struggle. No one saw her car being moved. No one recognized the figure in the footage. The absence of witnesses became
its own kind of evidence, proof that the person responsible was either incredibly lucky or terrifyingly calculated. Detectives followed leads as they emerged, phone calls reporting possible sightings, strangers claiming knowledge, tips that sounded promising but evaporated under scrutiny. False hope. Real desperation. A cycle that drained everyone involved. Search parties expanded. Volunteers combed lakes, woods, roadside ditches. Canine units traced scent trails. Helicopters scanned the ground from above. But the trail was already cold. Too much time had passed since Jennifer vanished. Too many hours slipped away before anyone realized she was missing. A crucial window, those first hours, could never be recovered. Jennifer's family made public pleas. They stood before cameras, holding photos of her smiling face, faces drawn with exhaustion, voices cracking with grief. "Please," they said, "help us find our daughter." And the world responded with sympathy, but not answers. Police explored countless leads. Co-workers, friends, former acquaintances, residents of the complex, workers, contractors. Every name, every connection, every potential thread was examined, cleared, or left unresolved due to lack of evidence. Dogs were brought into Jennifer's condo. They picked up her scent, but only within her home. Once outside, the trail vanished. It was as if Jennifer stepped out of her condo and dissolved into thin air. No trace, no trail, no direction. The deeper the investigation went, the more confusion emerged. Phone records revealed nothing unusual. No strange calls, no texts from unknown numbers, no financial activity after her disappearance. Her bank accounts remained untouched, her credit cards dormant. Jennifer's digital footprint ended the night before she vanished. Clean, clear, silent. Investigators considered the possibility of abduction, the possibility of a targeted attack, the possibility of a stranger's opportunity. Each theory carried weight, each theory held gaps. And through it all, her family bore the unbearable waiting, the unbearable silence, the unbearable ache of not knowing. The search and investigation revealed one devastating truth. No matter how hard they looked, no matter how many hours they spent retracing steps, no matter how many leads they chased into dead ends, Jennifer was gone, and the person responsible had vanished just as efficiently. To understand the case more fully, we must now step into the shadowed realm of possibilities, the theories, the suspicions, the developments that shaped the investigation long after those first frantic days. Because the search didn't end at 45 minutes. It didn't end that week. It didn't end that year. It continues, even now.
As the search widened and the investigation deepened, the case transformed. It began to shift from a missing person crisis to a maze of theories, each one pulling investigators in a different direction, each one holding fragments of possibility, none offering clarity. Theories became both a lifeline and a labyrinth, because in the absence of answers, in the vacuum of evidence, in the silence left behind, people began trying to fill the void with explanations, some grounded in fact, others born of fear, all haunted by the same unshakable question: who took Jennifer Kesse? The first theory, and perhaps the most intuitive one, centered around Jennifer's condo complex. The mosaic at Millenia wasn't just under construction. It was a revolving door of laborers and temporary workers, many of whom were not officially documented, many of whom came and went without formal tracking, many of whom held keys or access badges during the renovation. Jennifer had expressed her discomfort about them, not all of them, but enough that she mentioned it more than once. Eyes that lingered too long, men who watched her when she walked alone, moments that felt off.
vibe she couldn't fully articulate but trusted enough to confide in. And when a woman like Jennifer, someone grounded and rational, admits discomfort, it means something. Detectives explored this theory deeply. It was logical, it aligned with her environment, it fit the timeline. Someone could have watched her routine, learned her schedule, known when she left for work, known that Tuesday morning she would be alone, known that the hallways were quiet at that exact hour. Someone familiar with the building's layout could have approached her quickly, silently, and disappeared before anyone saw a thing. But there was a barrier to fully pursuing this theory. Many of the workers at the complex could not be properly identified. Records were incomplete. Some names were false. Some workers moved on before interviews were conducted. A revolving door, one that might have concealed the crucial truth. The second theory focused on a different direction, someone close to Jennifer. Not necessarily a romantic partner, but perhaps a coworker, an acquaintance, a neighbor, or someone who admired her from a distance, someone who noticed her beauty, her kindness, her routine, someone who became fixated, who watched carefully, who waited. But here's the problem. There was no evidence, no suspicious texts, no strange messages, no stalking behavior. No one in her inner circle showed signs of obsession or malice. Investigators interviewed coworkers and friends thoroughly. Everyone was cooperative. Everyone was open. Everyone had alibis. Jennifer's life didn't reveal an obvious threat, which made the theory feel both possible and painfully abstract. The third theory centered on a crime of opportunity, a stranger, someone passing through, someone who saw her at the wrong moment, approached at the right moment, and took advantage of silence and vulnerability. Orlando has always been a city of movement. Tourists, workers, commuters, people arriving and leaving constantly. And the area near Jennifer's condo wasn't no exception. It had busy roads, multiple apartment complexes, construction zones, and transient populations. The kind of environment where a predator could strike and disappear without leaving a trace. But again, no evidence, no witnesses, no sightings, no confirmed predator operating in the area at that time. Just possibility, just shadows. Then came the development that sent ripples through the entire case. The grainy surveillance footage, the mysterious figure, the masked movement hidden behind a gatepost. That short clip became the heartbeat of the investigation, the endless loop, the symbol of frustration. Every expert was brought in: video analysts, body language specialists, height measurement teams, gait examiners. Some believed the figure was male. Others argued female. Some said tall. Others said average height. Some believed the person walked like someone wearing construction boots. Others believed the stride was too smooth. No one could agree. No one had enough clarity. The footage was like a riddle with its clues erased. Another theory emerged, one that pointed to Huntington on the Green, the complex where Jennifer's car was abandoned. That area was known for higher crime rates, drug activity, transient residents, frequent police calls. Could someone living there have been responsible? Could someone have seen her driving by or followed her? Could someone have waited for an opportunity? Perhaps. But again, no evidence, no proof, no indication she knew anyone there. And yet, her car ended up there, placed deliberately, not hidden, not destroyed, positioned in a way that suggested calmness, confidence, and familiarity with the area. A fourth theory, one that emerged later, suggested that Jennifer's disappearance may have involved multiple people, a group, a team, an effort not just by one individual, but by more than one. The logic behind this theory came from the efficiency of the crime. No struggle, no noise, no evidence left behind. A car wiped clean, a body moved without detection, a timeline executed so smoothly it bordered on chilling coordination. But this theory also suffered from the same flaw as the others. No direct evidence, no confessions, no credible informants, just whispers, just speculation. One of the most painful theories, one Jennifer's father spoke about publicly, was that she may have become a victim of human trafficking. Orlando, with its tourism, its highways, its population density, and its proximity to ports and major routes, offers opportunities for organized trafficking networks. This theory stemmed from the speed and silence of her disappearance, the lack of a body, the absence of financial traces, the wiped car. The disappearance so complete, it felt orchestrated. Authorities explored this angle, but again, no evidence emerged. No sightings of Jennifer. No credible leads pointing to trafficking rings. It was a possibility born of pain more than proof. The hard truth of a father searching for any explanation that might still hold the possibility, if however faint, that Jennifer was alive somewhere. As years passed, developments continued to surface, but each new lead seemed to unravel before giving answers. Cadaver dogs searched construction sites. Nothing. Excavations occurred. Nothing. Old suspects resurfaced in tips. Ruled out. Nothing. Detectives retired. New detectives took over. Cold case units reviewed the files. Private investigators joined in. But the results remained unchanged. No body, no definitive evidence, no breakthrough. Theories multiplied, but certainty remained elusive. A more modern development came much later, years after Jennifer vanished. Her family fought for access to the case files, documents, video, photos, reports, until eventually they gained control. With the help of a private investigator, they sifted through tens of thousands of pages, interviews, tips, leads, evidence logs, and what they found was haunting. Clues overlooked, details misinterpreted, errors, missed opportunities, witnesses who were never re-interviewed, workers never identified, fragments of the case scattered across file boxes, pieces that never quite aligned. One truth became painfully clear. Theories grew because evidence did not. Speculation expanded because facts did not. Possibility multiplied because answers did not. And the greatest development of all, a devastating one, was the realization that Jennifer's disappearance might have been solvable in the first days, in the first hours, in the first moments, when time still mattered. But the window closed quickly, and it has remained closed ever since. And so we reach the final chapter. Not the end of the story, but the aftermath. The emotional landscape Jennifer's family has lived inside for nearly 2 decades. What remains when a person disappears so completely that even time cannot bring them back?
When the first days passed without answers, Jennifer's family prayed for a breakthrough. When the first weeks passed, they hoped for clues. When the first months passed, they clung to determination. And when the first years passed, they held on to something far more fragile, the belief that even in silence, truth remains alive. But living with a disappearance is unlike any other grief. It doesn't end. It doesn't settle. It doesn't heal. It lingers. It grows, reshapes, shifts. A wound that never closes fully,
a question that never stops echoing. Jennifer's parents, Joyce and Drew, refused to fade from the search. They pushed, they advocated, they pressed the authorities. They took control of the case file. They hired private investigators. They did everything parents can possibly do, even the impossible things. They traveled, spoke publicly, met with experts, relived the worst days of their lives over and over, because to stop searching would be a betrayal of the love they held for their daughter. Their devotion is the spine of this story, the force that kept Jennifer's name alive long after the world moved on to other headlines. Over the years, her case has been featured on national news, documentaries, podcasts, investigative specials. Each time the same heartbreak rises, a story with no ending, a narrative cut in half, a beginning with no middle, no conclusion, just an empty space where truth should be. People across the world have debated her case, studied the evidence, analyzed clues, watched the grainy footage frame by frame, searched satellite images, created online communities dedicated solely to her. Jennifer's story became part of a larger conversation about safety, vulnerability, and how someone can vanish without leaving a single clear trace. Her family has kept her memory alive in deeply human ways. They talk about her laugh, her smile, her ambition, her kindness. They talk about her dreams, her plans, the life she was building. Jennifer was more than a missing person poster, more than a headline, more than a mystery. She was a daughter, a sister, a girlfriend, a friend, a vibrant young woman with a future. And that is the tragedy. A life full of promise, cut short in a moment no one saw coming. The community still feels the imprint of her absence. Orlando remembers. Those who lived in her complex remember. Those who searched for her remember. Time has passed, but memory doesn't obey time. Memory bends, stretches, clings to the moments that mattered. Jennifer's case remains one of the most haunting unsolved disappearances in Florida's history, not just because it was sudden, not just because it was silent, but because it remains unsolved. Despite so much effort, so much searching, so much heartbreak. Her story is a reminder of how fragile safety can be, how quickly life can change, how one moment can rewrite everything. Her family still holds hope, not the naive hope that she will someday walk through the door, but the hope that they will someday have answers, that someone will come forward, that a witness will speak, that a conscience will crack, that truth will finally break through the silence. Hope is the only light in the darkest rooms, and Jennifer's family has carried that light for nearly 2 decades, a light that refuses to dim, even as the years stretch on. And so, as this story closes, not with resolution, but with reflection, we return to where it began. A young woman, rising in her career, loved deeply, building a future, living an ordinary life. And then, she vanished. No noise, no warning, no trace. Jennifer Kesse's story is one without an ending. But it is also one that lives on because the people who loved her refused to let her fade into silence. Her name remains spoken, her face remains remembered, her story remains alive. And somewhere out there, someone knows the truth. Until that truth comes to light, the world waits, listens, and remembers Jennifer Kesse.